Hey nerds, what's up? Today is a very exciting video because we're starting on the long, great debate of Marvel versus DC Comics. These comic book industries, only starting 2 years from each other, have been the biggest and opposing comic book forces since the 1930s. What I am comparing and contrasting is the different avenues that both DC and Marvel comics have integrated in, not just their comics, but their TV shows, their movies, and I'm seeing how they stack up against each other. I grew up in a DC household. My dad has been collecting comic books most of his life, and a lot of those have to do with Superman, Batman, Justice League, all of those in the DC Comics universe. But that doesn't mean I didn't take in my fair share of Marvel comics as well. I am a huge advocate of Spider-Man. I love him, he is my favorite. I've also read a lot of Fantastic Four, Thor, and some of the iconic Avengers comics. So really, I'm a fan of both franchises. And if you think that doesn't make me a real fan, sorry. So I'm going to be comparing and contrasting the different avenues that Marvel and DC Comics have used to spread their stories to the masses, including their animated TV shows, animated movies, their live action TV shows, and of course, their cinematic universes. Let's get started. This is your warning that a lot of the things that I'm going to be talking about, including the comics, movies, and TV shows, will contain spoilers, and of course, these are all my opinions and the things that I grew up on, so there's going to be a little bit of nostalgia bias as well. So, we of course start with some of the animated series that are a little cringy, which was like the Super Friends from 1970s to the mid 1980s. You know, shape of bucket of water. Super Friends. But starting in the 90s, we got some golden nuggets. Thank you to, I would call it the Bruce Timmiverse, where Bruce Timm was behind a lot of the really good Superman animated series, Batman animated series, Justice League Unlimited, the new Batman animated series, and the new Superman animated series. All of these encompassed, of course, Superman and Batman, and they started with Batman being on his own, doing his detective stuff, really getting the backstories of all the different villains, and same with Superman, getting to know him, getting acclimated to being a superhero in the city of Metropolis. And of course, as both of these franchises grew, and because they were created by Warner Brothers, they were able to integrate and put them together, which we had the Superman Batman animated movie where they meet each other and Batman throws or flips Superman over, and Superman just like gently lands and he's like, did you just do that to me? Like, do you know who I am? Like, so funny. And just again, the dynamics of between the two, their growing super families, including the Robins, and later on Nightwing with his iconic mullet. There's so much fun things that happen in both of those stories. They do it really well. And of course we have our iconic voice actors, Kevin Conroy as Batman, which a lot of people will argue that he is Batman, like he's the only Batman played. We have a great voice actor, Tim Daly as Superman, and of course, Mark Hamill as the Joker. They continue on into the Bruce Timm-verse by Justice League and Justice League Unlimited, where we get introduced to new characters like John Stewart, Green Lantern, Hawkgirl, and Hawkman, Martian Manhunter, The Flash, who am I missing? Wonder Woman. So many good characters as well, and they bring back characters from the original series, including Supergirl, and other iconic villains, as well as new villains that the Justice League has to deal with, including Darkseid, Doomsday, Gorilla Grodd, a bunch of things. It's really good. Some really other good shows as well, including Static Shock, which also was integrated into the Bruce Timm-verse when they did a Justice League crossover, and Static has to work with Justice League to save his best friend from the clutches of Brainiac. So good! Static Shock was a really neat take, and like what introduced me to the character Static Shock and like my love for him and all the different, again, he has like a lineup of villains and it's just a really cool storyline, and Virgil is great. A few years later, DC Comics came out with the Teen Titans. This follows Dick Grayson as Robin, and then he's Lady and Starfire, Cyborg, Beast Boy, and Raven. Now, this isn't exactly just like the original Teen Titans from the 80s in the comics, but they actually bring some of their original team members as cameos and side characters later on in the series. It's really good. The art is really nice. You have the creepy rendition of Slade with our very own Hellboy himself, Ron Perlman, as Slade, who is like quiet but intimidating, and it's just like, and they deal even with a very iconic story with Trigon. People say it differently. Raven's dad. There's a bunch of storylines which are really cool, and a lot of people actually wanted more seasons with them, especially like the last arc of the last season, where they introduced characters like Jericho and other iconic characters from like the original comics, and it's just like, I wanted more. And then we got Teen Titans Go, which is basically like a caricature of the original. I mean, all the original voice actors come back, but it's like 8-year-old humor, and just, couldn't we have just gotten more Teen Titans? And then a few years later after that, we have Young Justice. This again has great artwork. It actually, I'm pretty sure, is becoming a very iconic style for their animated movies, which we'll talk about in a little bit. And this again focuses on Dick Grayson as Robin. You have Speedy, you have Superboy, and who else? My brain is going blank all of a sudden. Oh, Martian McGann.
I was not kidding when I said that my mind went completely blank. I somehow completely forgot about Wally and Aqualad, who, you know, are two of the other main characters of Young Justice and super important. So please forgive me. Please don't come at me. I really don't know how I forgot these important characters.
And Artemis. And this one was a really good show too, and they do even a time jump where you see them all evolve into their adult superhero personas, and you get to see them raise the next generation with Tim Drake, Beast Boy, Bart Allen, and you get to again see the DC comic families and their backgrounds and just really get immersed in that, which was really nice and something that I really enjoyed with Young Justice, and something that I do think that DC does a really good job of.
Some other animated DC shows that I forgot to talk about included Batman Beyond, which was another part of the Bruce Timm-verse, The Batman, which was a early 2000s new take on Batman with a completely unique Joker and some other unique villains that came into the Batman universe, and Legion of Superheroes.
So overall, I think that DC Comics has some really good animated shows that I like to go back to and enjoy for nostalgia's sake. I really want to watch Teen Titans again. It was so good. They have some really good storytelling and also put in those DC stories that we love from the comics. Marvel also has some very notable animated TV shows, from Fantastic Four and Spider-Man from the early 60s to the 90s, which we get into the X-Men series, we get into the Spider-Man series, which both of those are really good, very iconic 90s goodness, as well as one of my favorite shows or iterations of the X-Men, which is X-Men Evolution. That was so good, like early 2000s, and dealing with, again, more young teenage versions of all of our superheroes, which of course I really resonated with because I was a teenager at the time when I was watching them. So, but X-Men Evolution has really great character development and probably the best theme song for Magneto, which is just a very creepy light piano playing as he approaches. Yeah. But there's some really great moments that deal with characters from the comics that I think a lot of people don't deal with, because you have Magneto, who's like a classic, the classic big bag, but we also deal with some of Charles Xavier's children. But overall, really good animation, great storytelling again, and just I love the characters in X-Men Evolution. Also, I don't know how many people watched the MTV Spider-Man, the new animated series, very CGI. That one was really cool too. I really liked that iteration of Spider-Man. Probably one of my favorite Spider-Man shows that came in the late 2000s was The Spectacular Spider-Man. This was actually animated by an artist that I had followed on DeviantArt a couple of years before, and I did not know that he was working on this animated series, and I was like, oh, that's awesome. So Spectacular Spider-Man is another like reboot story, how Spider-Man gets his powers, him dealing with Venom for the first time, him dealing with both Gwen Stacy and Mary Jane, the evolution of like Eddie Brock turning into Venom, and Lizard Man, and how Green Goblin comes to be. But it was a really fun series. There was only 2 seasons, which is such a bummer, but it was such a fun series. And again, the animation was really good notable voice actors throughout the series. That one was a really fun one to watch on Saturday mornings, and I miss it. Some more recent shows that were on Disney XD were The Ultimate Spider-Man, which that Spider-Man was voiced by Drake Bell, which was very interesting, but it has a really cute dynamic that I really enjoy, which is there's like a chippy Spider-Man that comes and just does either jokes or talks to you, which is very much what Spider-Man does in the comics, where he is either talking to you or talking to himself and trying to deal with all of the emotions and baggage that he has to deal with. And that one's fun to watch. And they do a 4-part episode event where it's like a Spider-Verse event, and this was before Into the Spider-Verse came out, and it was awesome. And you see Spider-Ham, and you see the Spider-Man Noir, and you see future Spider-Man, I think it's like Spider-Man 88 or something, and just a really fun, and of course Miles Morales, because Miles Morales is so good, and a Spider-Woman, and just it was a lot of fun iterations of Spider-Man. And of course Into the Spider-Verse, or any Spider-Verse kind of storytelling is just so much fun. They had Avengers Earth Mightiest Heroes, which was a really awesome animated series that I don't think lasted super long before they kind of rebooted it into Avengers Assemble. My sister and I actually really enjoy Avengers Assemble, but Earth's Mightiest Heroes was also a very good Avengers animated show. So both of those were really good. But with Avengers Assemble, we do get a crossover into the Ultimate Spider-Man universe, which is always fun. They did an Ultron event where Spider-Man comes in to help for a little bit, and just the dynamic of his interaction with the Avengers is super fun and very reminiscent to how Static Shock interacted with the Justice League. It's just like, oh man, these people who are like so much more iconic and awesome, but I'm working with them, which is great, and a good time. I know that there are a lot more animated series that have been happening through, I think, Disney XD and things, which I haven't really checked out, including ones about Squirrel Girl and just the different Avengers. Oh, Miss Marvel, I think, is in it too. So it's definitely interesting to see what new shows Marvel is going to keep coming up with. With all of these things said, we have some decisions to make. In the realm of animated TV shows, I feel like both franchises have put out some really good shows that are iconic and really fun to go back to and be nostalgic for. I have to give it to DC, but only because I feel that the animated shows and movies that have come from the animated shows are the best DC storytelling and way that they have presented the characters. So for me, that's kind of who I think of when I think of Superman, when I think of Batman, when I think of Wonder Woman. So the animated shows are what I hold on to and why I think that they are a little bit superior to the Marvel animated universe. Thanks for watching this episode of Marvel vs. DC, where I compared the animated TV shows. We will be comparing animated movies next. So thanks again so much for watching, and I'll see you guys next time. I did grow up in a DC Universe household. But that doesn't mean I didn't take in my fair share. What I am talking about today, and what I am debating, is the kind of seeing how, and I'm seeing, so we're going to be diving into all of the different category, or I should say. So I'm going to be comparing a lot of the different genres of entertainment that DC and Marvel have been putting their So I'm going to be comparing, I'm warning you now. This is a warning that a lot of the shows, comics, and this is your warning. Oh. A few years later, the DC oh my goodness. John, the name completely escaped me. John, oh my gosh. Why is John, it's not John Green, because he's a Green Lantern. John Stewart? Oh no! I think that's his name, John. DZ. Yes, okay. Introduced to